Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today I am here to do a video about how strong is Shinjuku Yuji. After all, I feel like here is a good place to actually make that specific video, mainly because of the fact that Yuji has just landed a Black Flash. But more importantly, the narrator themselves specifically had said that Yuji Itadori had awakened. So if things are going to go as I predict, and I actually do think this is very, very likely, the Yuji Itadori we're about to see fight against Sukuna is going to have completely different scaling in comparison to Shinjuku Itadori. I also just feel this is a good place to reflect on Shinjuku Itadori's scaling in order for us to see where he is at, so we can compare him to what awakened Yuji will end up doing in the future. So before we get into this video, if you like anime content like this, because we have plenty more coming on the channel, even though it's been mainly Jujutsu Kaisen, we do have a Hunter x Hunter and a Naruto video on the way, and well as other animes I'm planning to actually make videos for, as well as of course a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen content like usual, then be sure to subscribe because they will be coming in the future, and you won't want to miss this if you like me talking about Jujutsu Kaisen already. Oh, and also, I apologize if my voice does sound a little bit different in comparison to normal. That is because I am sick, but even though I'm sick, I ain't gonna stop recording now. The grind never stops. Anyways, let's get into the actual video of how strong is Shinjuku Itadori. Now, this video is going to be separated into basically 4 separate parts, where the first part of this video is going to be talking about how strong Shinjuku Itadori is in comparison to himself from the past. The second part of this video is going to go over his feats and how he compares now to characters nowadays. The third part of it is going to be going over his Cursed Energy Mastery as well as his techniques that he now has access to, because Yuji now has a massive arsenal, and the final part of this video is going to be about where I actually put Yuji and how strong I think Yuji is at the end of the day. Now up first, a really important thing to understand is the fact that Shinjuku Itadori is on a completely different level in comparison to even Chapter 214 Yuji, which to summarize Chapter 214 Yuji scaling, because I've already made several videos talking about how strong 214 Yuji is, he was able to tank a blow that should have surpassed Mahito's Black Flash because of the fact that Sukuna had expected Yuji to die, even though he was aware of the fact that Yuji was able to live through getting hit by Mahito's Black Flash, even though he was emotionally caught off guard. On top of that, he was also able to fight against Sukuna for a little bit. Sukuna made a statement of where did this strength come from, so he was clearly caught off guard by the strength, and he was also able to keep up with Maki in speed. He was still slower than Maki, but he was able to keep up with Maki nonetheless. However, the Yuji we have now is much faster, stronger, and most of all, much more durable in comparison to Yuji in the past, where when Yuji had arrived, Sukuna had made a comment that not just Yuji but all the sorcerers had increased their fundamentals and their reinforcement abilities, with Sukuna making a particular statement that each of them had been mainly focusing on their defenses, and their defenses were extremely tight. So while all of them had gotten a universal buff, the main place that their buff was located was towards their defenses, even though they did get a speed buff and an attack buff, even though some people did get a better speed buff and attack buff in comparison to others because they were much weaker in comparison, but now they can actually compare to the stronger characters. The reason why this is important to establish is because I have seen a bunch of people who straight up say that Yuji hasn't gotten stronger throughout the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen, and he is still the same power level as he was in like Shibuya, he just has extra abilities, which is completely wrong and not the case anymore. Yuji is much faster and much stronger and just a completely different beast in comparison to what he was before. Like, to put it into comparison, remember when Yuji was trying to punch Mahito several times back in Shibuya, when Mahito had fully awakened his true form and got a massive durability increase? Well, what happened to Mahito when Yuji was trying to punch him would basically be what would happen if Mahito tried to attack this current form of Yuji, because of that much of a massive durability increase has happened to this Yuji, where someone like Mahito's normal hits would not even be able to reach someone like that Yuji. The reason why I'm focusing so heavily on that is to truly just put it into perspective of how much this Yuji actually grew in comparison to even his Chapter 214 self, let alone Yuji across the entire series. However, that's just in comparison to himself. Now we're actually going to take other characters' feats and see where Yuji scales to in comparison to other characters in order to actually answer the question of how strong is Yuji. Because while we can say how strong Yuji is in comparison to himself, now is going to be the part where we look at other characters and see how he performs in relativity to them. Now the first feat of importance we're going to look at in order to understand how strong Shinjuku Yuji is going to be both Yuji and Yuta's battle against Sukuna inside of Yuta Okotsu's domain expansion. Now, while Yuji does have feats such as blocking 2 of Sukuna's punches with his arms, as well as the ability to take several of Sukuna's slashes where he needs to heal them off of RCT, we don't really know where those scale to in comparison because of the fact that Sukuna's power is really hard to scale because it's really, really nebulous. So we're going to use Yuta as a way to measure Yuji's power because Yuji actually compares to Yuta inside of the domain, where even inside of Yuta's domain, Yuji had shown repeated ability to be able to keep up with Yuta Okotsu in terms of speed, power, as well as durability. as there's even a scene where both Yuji and Yuta end up taking a similar amount of slashes when Yuta Akotsu was talking about them cheating from Sukuna, and them both actually taking those slashes to similar degrees of damage, implying there's a level of durability relativity between both Yuji Itadori and Yuta Akotsu. In that battle, they both were able to knock Sukuna around to similar degrees, as well as hold Sukuna down in similar types of ways too. Now, it should be noted, Rika is still physically stronger than Yuji up to this point because of the fact that we do see Rika doing the most physically against Sukuna. However, Yuji and Yuta display similar amounts of physicality, with Yuta using curse energy to amp himself up to those levels, while Yuji just has his physical strength, as well as his now insane levels of curse energy reserves, which I'm going to save for the ability sections of this video. Now, I do want to note this, inside of Yuta Akotsu's domain, Yuji was the weakest of the three of them, but that's not because Yuta was outstatting him, it was because of the fact that Yuta had so many curse techniques that he'd be able to use that made him have a lot of versatilities. However, in terms of stats, they are pretty relative to each other, if not near direct equals, considering what we see them do inside of Yuta Akotsu's domain. Furthermore, they're also relative enough in terms of power to actually fight alongside each other, which we know is something you need to do in order to fight alongside each other in Jujutsu Kaisen. You can't have someone massively weaker than you fight alongside you, as it was displayed with Gojo, and that's why Gojo only works well alone, because no one is able to fight alongside him, because no one is on Gojo's level. The same goes for Yuta Akotsu, where they need someone relative to him, at least to some degree of relativity, whether it's low end or mid end, but Yuji is much more than mid end relativity to him, then he actually has displayed the ability to be able to fight alongside Yuta, which adds even more to the argument that Yuta Akotsu and Yuji Itadori are relative in terms of stats, while Yuta does have the advantage with how many massive amounts of curse techniques that he's able to use through his domain expansion. Now, it should be noted, neither of them actually scale to Sukuna, mainly because of the fact that Yuji was ridiculously nerfing his output with each of those punches, as well as the fact that Sukuna had to keep Hollow Wicker Basket up the entire time to not be hit by Jacob's Ladder. However, the next time we see Yuji in this battle is in his battle against Sukuna in chapter 255, when he joins Miguel and Laru in the battle against Sukuna, with Choso and Maki backing him up in this battle as well, where Yuji immediately starts out the battle by going down there in order to slam his fists against Sukuna. So while Sukuna does block the strike, Yuji's punch is so powerful that against Sukuna's block, it was able to shatter parts of the ground underneath them, something that we very rarely see being done in Jujutsu Kaisen from just pure raw physical attacks. Now, we do see this being done through curse techniques, but we rarely see this being done through physical attacks. In the battle, we also see Yuji and Choso tag team against Sukuna, with Yuji pressing Sukuna against the wall with a rail, while at the same time Choso fires out a piercing blood. However, Sukuna successfully dodges that piercing blood, before Yuji ends up socking Sukuna straight in the jaw and launching him back through that. He actually managed to push Sukuna back, as it's then Choso actually gave Yuji a little bit of his blood in order to use his own version of piercing blood, because Yuji's unable to use the piercing blood effectively on his own, where Yuji and Sukuna fight for a little bit, with Sukuna being amped by a Black Flash. However, at the same time, he is nerfed by Yuji thanks to Yuji's output nerfing punches, where at the same time, Sukuna is able to punch a little bit of a hole through Yuji's side that Yuji's able to regenerate, as Sukuna then has to take a piercing blood straight to the face that actually ends up doing quite a bit of damage to Sukuna. This piercing blood being amped up by Yuji's curse energy, making it that much more powerful in the process, actually allowing it to do that much more massive amounts of damage, before he finally lands what is the biggest Black Flash we have ever seen in the JJK series on Sukuna, one so massive it made Sukuna look tiny in comparison. So as you guys can tell, Yuji is quite a bit stronger than he used to be in terms of physical stats. However, what the time skip really was there for Yuji Itadori was to actually amp up his moveset, because originally his moveset was quite lackluster, where originally all he had was a Divergent Fist, Black Flash, and the ability to throw rocks at people that were infused with curse energy, as well as his incredible physical-like abilities, where Yuji did have the ability to cross distances pretty easy thanks to how fast and strong he was. That wasn't something that was always reliable. However, after the time skip, Yuji has been able to gain quite a few abilities, as well as get quite an upgrade in terms of his curse energy, which we're going to go over first. In terms of curse energy, Yuji has a massive amount of curse energy, able to fight against Sukuna for this long amount of time, while at the same time having to heal off a total of 6 lethal wounds to his body, yet still being able to continue to fight. So I've seen a misconception that people have, where because Yuji was struggling with healing off one of the lethal blows recently, he actually doesn't have that much curse energy, which is completely wrong because Yuji already healed off 4 lethal blows before that one, but it's also because Yuji couldn't find where that spot in his body that was hurt was in order to heal it. It wasn't actually because Yuji had bad RCT, it was because it was hard to find on the body and what actually got healed because it was internal type of damage. However, Choso had taught him the method of how to detect things throughout the body and detect things through his own body using his own blood manipulation, which is going to make it so an issue like that doesn't happen again. So Yuji was able to heal several lethal blows to himself, including a hole to his own stomach twice, as well as several cleaves that he would have needed to heal off. To put this in comparison to someone like Sendai Yuta Akotsu, Sendai Yuta was taking several hits from Ryu and Uro and needed to heal off each of them, and was starting to bottom out in terms of curse energy. And in comparison, Sendai Yuta Akotsu, before he put the ring on, did not take anywhere near as much lethal damage as Yuji did, where there were holes inside of his side, where the worst that Yuta had to heal off was his own charred fingers, in comparison to Yuji Itadori, who had to heal off several lethal wounds to his own body, including his own side twice. Now, I don't think this is only just Yuji having more curse energy than Sendai Yuta. I don't actually think that Sendai Yuta has less curse energy than Yuji. It's just Yuji is that much more efficient with his curse energy in comparison to someone like Sendai Yuta Akotsu. Of course, current Yuta Akotsu is massively better with RCT in comparison to Sendai Yuta Akotsu, being able to show relative healing speeds to this Yuji Itadori, but it is still something that is impressive and worth noting nonetheless, the massive amount of curse energy and the curse energy upgrades that Yuji got over the 1 month time skip. Speaking of upgrades, another upgrade that Yuji has recently gotten is blood manipulation, mainly because of the fact that Yuji has eaten his brothers and acts as a perfect symbiotic vessel for his brothers. He is able to use his brother's curse technique of blood manipulation. However, he does have limited levels of what he's actually able to use it from. For example, we do know Yuji is able to use Supernova, but we do know that Yuji is also struggling with using Convergence, which doesn't allow him to use things like piercing blood. Now, whether Yuji has access to more blood techniques like Slicing Exorcism or most of all Flowing Red Skill and Flowing Red Skill stack is currently unknown to us, but it might be possible he does, it might be possible he doesn't. We don't entirely know yet, and that's something we're going to have to wait for in the future to show whether Yuji unlocks those abilities through this Black Flash he's landed or if he's always had access to them, or if Yuji even ends up displaying these abilities at all. But Yuji does have access to blood manipulation, and he does have access to a way to bypass the normal weakness that most blood manipulators have, which is their limited amount of blood, which is the fact that Yuji is able to heal himself, which means he is able to produce even more blood for himself to manipulate. The normal drawback that most blood manipulators have is they have a limited amount of blood because they can't really heal themselves with RCT, considering how rare RCT is, especially skill levels of RCT that Yuji Itadori has access to. However, the most important ability that Yuji had gained access to was his soul-shattering punches. These are punches that directly harm the soul, which, as we found out through Maki, that once you do damage to the soul, unless you are aware of the soul, you're not actually able to heal the soul. Furthermore, Yuji also has a form of durability negation, where even if you do block his attacks, it's still going to hurt you because it directly damages your soul. So even if you block it, it's not really going to do much against Yuji Itadori because of how his soul punches work, where Yuji is able to disrupt the connection between body and soul, which as a result of that, he is able to do several things, such as when it comes to reincarnated sorcerers, he's able to wake up the original body, as well as destroy the bath ritual that Sukuna had done in order to suppress Megumi, but more importantly, he is able to suppress the output of people he had punched directly in the soul, by disrupting the connection between body and soul, disrupting their own cursed energy output in the process, while also having the potential ability to kick another soul out of a body, because this is what we see Yuji do directly against Kusakabe when he was testing out this ability against Kusakabe. Now, Yuji did end up swapping souls with Kusakabe, however, we do know that that wasn't what Yuji's original intention was, as Kusakabe had told Yuji to get a handle on this ability. There's also been some debate on whether Yuji is able to disrupt the cursed energy output of other people that aren't reincarnated vessels. However, in my opinion, I do actually think that Yuji is able to, mainly because of the fact that we do see Yuji mainly focusing on using these soul punches, or at least testing them out against Kusakabe during the training month time skip. That, and each time that Sukuna's output lowering is talked about, it's talked about as something separate from Megumi regaining more and more control over the body. So yes, Yuji is able to apply this to several people, which makes him even more of a threat against most other people, because not just does he have a way of negating durability and kicking a soul basically out of a body, but he also has the ability to be able to punch someone and nerf their own output. He also has the ability to inject his own soul into other people, which he displayed against Megumi when he had been able to inject his own soul in order to talk to Megumi, even though Megumi had given up on the will to fight. Yuji is now able to do this and inject his own soul into somebody else's body. However, whether you believe that Yuji is able to nerf the output of people who aren't reincarnated sorcerers or people who don't have 2 souls or not, that I'm going to leave ultimately up to you. I'm just going to give my opinion on it. However, we do now actually know the degree of nerfing to output that Yuji is able to do, which the degree of nerf to output that Yuji is able to pull off is the equivalent of what output is regained or gained from the Black Flash from Sukuna. As Choso himself says, that it doesn't matter how many Black Flashes that Sukuna lands, as long as Yuji can keep punching him, he will keep bringing him down, basically implying that each time Sukuna lands a Black Flash, Yuji's punches are able to bring him back down and basically nullify that effect completely. So overall, Yuji has gained a massive amount of abilities over the time skip, with the one thing that he is currently lacking on is some way to counter domain expansions, with a great amount of striking power, speed, durability, and abilities, putting him easily in the top of the verse, though he isn't really that high up in like the top 10, but I would put him in the top 10 personally. However, I do know there are some people who are against that, mainly because of domain. But at the same time, I think there are a bunch of people that usually can just speed blitz or take out pretty fast before they even activate the domaining character, but that's for another day. However, I think Yuji is now extremely strong even before he ends up awakening against Sukuna and displaying whatever he's about to show off. But that's just my opinion, and I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below on how strong Shinjuku Itadori is.